So I've been spending some time recently playing a pretty niche racing game, and that racing game shares exactly what it is within the first 5 minutes. This is Tony Stewart's Sprint Car Racing. And literally, you load in, you pick a dirt oval, you turn left, over and over and over again. And honestly, whether you enjoy this game or completely bounce off it depends entirely on how you feel about that sentence. Because this is not a broad racing game that tried to appeal to everyone, it's a very aggressively niche dirt oval racer built for a very specific audience. If you already love sprint car racing, there's a decent chance you've probably played this or will enjoy what's here. And if you don't, then this game can feel like psychological warfare, well, very quickly. So before we dive into the ins and outs of this game, who the hell is Tony Stewart? And that's a question I had to ask very quickly as someone who's aggressively English. For my American racing game audience, I'm sure you already know who this man is, and he seems pretty damn cool, but for those of you who are not in that audience, this is Tony Stewart, a 4-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, and he's won twice as a driver, one as an owner and driver, and one as an owner, which is pretty damn crazy to be honest with you. This dude seems like a pretty nice guy, and you'll get to know him a bit more as we go through the game.
The drivers seem to be getting into a rhythm out there. Great job. Two more laps to go.
Okay, so at first glance, sprint car racing almost looks too simplistic to sustain like an entire game. All the tracks are basically just ovals. Some have 2 corners, some have 4. And to this day I have not seen a right turn. That's basically the entire pitch. But weirdly enough, the tracks do feel distinct from one another. Different banking angles, bumps in the dirt, tighter entries, and varying straight lengths all change how aggressively you can attack corners. Some tracks reward sliding the rear out early, others punish you for instantly overcommitting, which I was doing quite a lot of. And despite the layout sounding repetitive on paper, the actual racing has a surprisingly chaotic rhythm to it. These cars never feel fully under control, they're constantly drifting around, sliding, threatening to spin out if you get too greedy with the throttle into corners. And that unstable feeling is probably the best thing this game has to offer. I mean, I'll be real with you guys, I'd never heard of this type of racing before playing this game. But like, honestly, I'm kinda hooked. So let's talk about the handling, because on Steam the game is listed as part Sim Racer, which is certainly an interesting title to give it. This is definitely more arcade than hardcore simulation. The game likes to market itself with sim-style branding, but realistically this is a game that definitely sits firmly in that simcade category, leaning more towards the cade side of things. It's accessible enough for casual players, like me, who'd never heard of it, loose enough to feel exciting, and technical enough to punish mistakes if you do get a little bit greedy. The top tier winged sprint cars are easily the most enjoyable vehicles in the game because they actually demand throttle control. The other 2 classes, especially the first, you don't really ever need to brake. You can just slightly adjust how hard you accelerate and turn, and that's kind of it. But with those top tier cars, you're never just holding the accelerator flat, you actually have to think about things. Don't get me wrong, the slower classes are fun and they do feel different, there's less power and slightly less chaos, but there is more emphasis on tighter cornering lines. And credit where it's due, the game does a respectable job making all 3 divisions feel unique, despite the very limited structure surrounding them. Now let's discuss the visuals of this game, because this is a very brown game. Extremely brown. Every track is of course dirt, so it's covered in dirt textures, dust clouds, and the lighting tries its best to make the muddy oval racing look dramatic, and honestly it does actually work a lot better than I thought it would. The cars themselves are detailed enough, reflections look decent enough, and races can actually look pretty intense once you've got 25 sprint cars all sliding into the same corner at once. There's a roughness to the presentation that kind of fits the sport. This certainly isn't the F1 glamour that I'm used to, this is very much so local dirt racing chaos, something of which is very refreshing to me. The one disappointing part is that the tracks never really evolve during races. The dirt surface looks dynamic, but it doesn't really deform in any meaningful ways like you might expect from a modern off-road racer. So the racing line you start on with lap 1 is basically the same one that you can probably use later on. Now before we go any further, if you're a fan of racing games or niche racing games in this case, then please consider hitting that subscribe button and tapping the bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads, especially if you want to see an aggressively English person tackling very American race classes. And whilst you're at it, if you want to be the first to hear about my upcoming projects or just come and talk about some cool games, then join my Discord server using the link in the description below. And every now and then I do run the occasional giveaway for you guys in that server, so there you go, more incentive for you. So let's discuss the career mode, because the career mode is where you will be spending pretty much all of your time. And initially it's very addictive, I'm not gonna lie. You start out underpowered, underfunded, and struggling to compete consistently. Winning races feels very difficult early on, so the game pushes you toward gradual improvement through upgrades. And surprisingly, the upgrades matter a lot. Better tyres noticeably improve grip, suspension upgrades stabilize the car, engine upgrades actually increase performance, and you can feel the difference. Every purchase feels meaningful, which makes saving money from earnings satisfying. The only downside is the amount of repetition required to earn that money, because every race weekend follows basically the exact same structure. Practice session, qualifying, heat race, and then if you get in the top 2 of that heat race, another heat race, and then the actual feature event. And the game expects you to repeat this process constantly. So when the season says you've got like 20 events remaining, what it really means is closer to 100 separate different events. That's where the grind starts setting in. However, I will say I really enjoyed the challenge and the feeling of going from underdog to actually consistently competing in the top 10. When I first won a race, I'm not gonna lie, it did not feel earned at all. I basically pulled a Chick Hicks maneuver, caused a crash, and then just kind of won by default. And the worst part was, at the end of that race, Tony Stewart himself appeared on my screen to congratulate me for the win.
I knew you could do it. That was a great win. I'm proud of you.
No. Wait.
Sorry bro, I literally put you into a wall, what are you talking about? But after that frankly very dirty victory, I learned and progressed as a human being and decided to actually start winning or trying to win legitimately, and was consistently hitting the top 10 and eventually top 5 by the time the season was drawing to a close. Now, as I'm sure you've probably worked out by now, this game does have a lot of repetition, so this is the point where you're either going to become completely absorbed by sprint car racing, or completely exhausted by it, because structurally this game literally doesn't change at all over time. You race, you earn money, you buy upgrades, you repeat the same event format again, and again, and again. There aren't really major surprises waiting later on in the career mode. There's no dramatic progression system change, no evolving race weekends or huge gameplay shakeups. The game simply gives you more sprint car racing, which of course sounds very obvious, but it also means the entire experience lives or dies based on whether you personally enjoy dirt oval racing as a concept. If you do, there is something oddly relaxing about the repetition. You fall into this rhythm of drifting corners, managing throttle control, and slowly improving your vehicle and driving, like me, over time. But of course, if you don't, this will feel like one of the most repetitive racing games ever made. Now, to its credit, the AI does help keep races entertaining for a little while. Large fields create constant traffic, and with 20 plus cars fighting for space on, let's face it, quite small tracks, races can become gloriously messy and violent. Avoiding contact becomes just as important as raw speed, because the damage in this game actually matters. Crash into barriers or other cars too often, and the repair costs start eating into your profits, and in turn your ability to upgrade your car quick enough to keep up. Overdrive the car aggressively, and parts also wear down a lot faster. It's not like the deepest management system ever made, but it certainly gives races enough consequence to stop career mode from becoming completely mindless. And honestly, when the racing clicks, it really clicks. There's something satisfying about threading through traffic while balancing a sprint car sideways at quite a large speed. The game absolutely captures the unstable violence of dirt driving. It just struggles to really build anything bigger around that. Tony Stewart's sprint car racing is literally Marmite the game. You either like it or you don't. There's like no middle ground here. If the idea of endlessly chasing cleaner laps around dirt ovals sounds satisfying, then there is genuine fun hidden underneath the repetition. But if you need variety or spectacle or like long-term progression to stay engaged, well, this ain't it, chief, find another game. Unfortunately, the situation gets even stranger once you start looking at what happened after release, because just 6 months later, another Tony Stewart racing game arrived, using a lot of similar content. So, as it turns out, not only does Tony Stewart love racing, Tony Stewart also loves money.
Hello, I like money.
Allow me to introduce Tony Stewart's All-American Racing. And don't get me wrong, this does feature different racing classes, and the game was absolutely good, but the problem is, there was like no time in between releases. It's the same developer, basically the same name, with Sprint Car Racing launching in February of 2020, and All-American Racing launching in September of 2020, and then a load of DLC dumped out before the end of that same year. Similar presentation, the same kind of handling philosophy and same structures. And that to me just gives the entire package this weird budget motorsport franchise energy. It's not offensively lazy, but it's just definitely very safe, because you got two games doing essentially the same thing in the same time period. Anyway, back to Sprint Car Racing, it does do something pretty well, and that is multiplayer. It has local split screen, which is always a massive win, but it also has some very stable and smooth online races that support large grids without turning into a laggy disaster. Now obviously I've had to base that information off of retroactive research because good luck finding a large player base for this 6-year-old game that had a sequel the same year, but it looks impressive. And like I say, split screen multiplayer is always a win, so if you just want a simple racing game to throw on with a friend, Sprint Car Racing does handle that side of things nicely. The issue again is incentive. There's not much reason to stay invested for the multiplayer long term. The ranking system looks a little strange, and outside of doing split screen races, there's not really much else going on, which does kind of describe almost every aspect of this game.
We are constantly working on improving our racetrack here, so head on down to the concession stand and grab a bite to eat.
Honestly, one of the biggest things holding Sprint Car Racing back from being more memorable is just that it lacks personality. And not in the sense that it's broken or unfinished, but in the sense that it doesn't really stick with you after you stop playing. The menus are clean enough, like they're functional, the commentary exists, but it's incredibly repetitive after you've played for like an hour. The soundtrack is there, and the career mode does work. Everything does its job, technically, but very little leaves a lasting impression. Compare that to the best racing games, and they usually have something iconic holding everything together, like a memorable atmosphere or an incredible soundtrack or deep progression. But Sprint Car Racing doesn't really have any of those things, it's just competent, and competence alone rarely creates nostalgia for a game. That said, there is something strangely relaxing about the game once you fully accept what it is, because underneath all the repetition and recycled structure, there's a very simple gameplay loop that can become weirdly therapeutic. Race, drift corners, earn money, upgrade car, repeat. There's almost a comfort food quality to it. You don't need to overthink any strategies, you don't need to memorize complicated mechanics, you just settle into the rhythm of dirt racing and gradually improve. And honestly, that simplicity is probably why the game still has a dedicated niche audience. It knows exactly what it wants to be, even if what it wants to be is incredibly repetitive. It's just relaxing to me, honestly. So the big question is, who is this game actually for? Because obviously it's never trying to compete with the biggest racing franchises, and it definitely wasn't built for people looking for more destruction-heavy arcade chaos, like in Wreckfest. This game exists specifically for sprint car and dirt oval fans. That's the audience, which obviously isn't the largest audience in the world, but it's an audience that is still there. And now this game has made me a fan, which probably makes me one of the first to have been converted to liking this sport by playing the game first. Sprint car racing is one of the purest examples of a niche racing game. It delivers exactly what it promises: dirt oval racing, upgradable sprint cars, simple progression, and that's kind of the package, and honestly there's something respectable about how straightforward it is, so fair play Tony Stewart, you absolute legend. The problem is though, is that it rarely goes beyond that baseline. Career mode becomes very repetitive, the presentation's kind of meh. Long-term motivation to keep playing fades quite quickly, but at the end of the day this game costs £8.50 at full price, so it's not the most expensive game on planet Earth, and for that price you do get a decent amount of content. Overall, I enjoyed my time playing Tony Stewart's Sprint Car Racing, and to be honest, after making this video, I might hop back in and just finish the season I was already on, just so I have a sense of completion. It's a very specific racing game tailored for a very specific audience, and for that, it has my deepest respect. So let me know in the comments down below, have you played this game, are you going to go check it out, and do you have any other niche racing games you'd like to see me tackle on the channel? Bearing in mind my main racing knowledge is Formula 1 and 2, so anything American is just completely alien to me, and I am very interested to get into NASCAR soon. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thank you and goodbye.